Everybody has a story, and we aim to reveal the most impactful experiences of our guests that our listeners can learn and grow from. American Premium Vodka is a proud partner that helps make this show possible. Please enjoy this episode of the Blueprint Banter. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you decided to take the time to do this. I mean, I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah.
I sent you that link, and it's obviously not like we've talked a whole lot about it. But just to give you a little context, I guess, of, obviously this isn't scripted, which is what I love. I think it also sort of works when some of the people that I've had on, I didn't know very well, or like don't know a ton about their background. And I think sometimes when you do, you can sort of like in a biased way lead the conversation in a certain way, you know what I'm saying? And so when it's sort of just genuine, it does seem to flow well. So, and I promise I won't try to ask any like really stupid questions that you're like, what the hell? But it really just stemmed from, like, in business, you network and you get to know people's stories. And I sort of have this, like, I'm kind of a chip on the shoulder type of guy. I didn't grow up with a ton, and I really appreciate people that grind and get to where they get to. And so I enjoy listening to people's stories. And a lot of times, like in business and stuff, it's like, hey, how's it going? Business is awesome. Yeah, crushing it, whatever, like fucking shallow stuff. Yeah. But when you really sit down and like take the time to get to know somebody, you find out that like, hey, it wasn't always so easy. There's stories there and you can learn from it. And so I sort of, I don't know, it just naturally came about, I guess. Like it just seemed like I got into a lot of those conversations, and it was just like, I don't know if it's necessarily a gift, but it's just, I like it. So it started kind of 2020. I was like, man, I should just start recording some of these conversations. And didn't yet. And then about a year ago, some of my team members were like, dude, just fucking get a domain and just start doing it, And so we did. Here we are. I don't know, like episode 16, 17, something like that. It doesn't have a huge following yet by any means, but it's awesome.
Good for you. Yeah, you enjoy doing it. And it's always good hearing people's stories. So.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, man, it's like the 5 to 10 people that'll reach out to me after a new episode drops, and it's like, holy fuck, when you said this or whatever. And I think that's just what like keeps me doing it for right now too. And I had a buddy of mine that's in that breakfast group that you came and spoke to. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about one of them. And he's like, well, I was like, it didn't get a ton of like views or anything yet, but I thought it was a really good episode and I enjoyed it. And I think there's a few people that learn stuff from it. And he's like, well, that's not really what you're doing it for anyway, is it? Like, why do you care? Well, yeah, that's a good point, I guess. It'd be nice for people to get some little bit more exposure as it grows. But, so yeah, man. Well, if you want to, you can kind of pull that mic up a little bit closer to you. It doesn't have to be like absurdly in your face, but how do you pronounce your last name?
McLean.
McLean.
Yeah.
See, I was running down that McLean.
A lot of people do McLean, but we're McLean. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm just how we've always pronounced it. It's not like I have a Scottish ancestor or anything that's telling me you got to do it this way. It's just the way.
I mean, how do any of us know really? I guess how our names are supposed to be pronounced. It's just somebody said it was that way.
I get the question all the time too. Yeah. Because it's MCL, mine, right? Or there's MAC, there's MCCL, all that. I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea why it's that way. Probably it was written down somewhere way back when, and that's just the way it stuck.
Oh yeah. So, well, I just don't want to refer to you as some other dumbass sounding way. If it's McLean, we'll use McLean.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, but that journey, the Blueprint banner sort of just stemmed from that. Like, what is someone's blueprint to how they got to where they are now? And one of my favorite sayings is "must be nice." So I love it when somebody sees somebody in their current situation and is like, must be nice to be the head coach of the Iowa Wild, and he was an assistant. And not that I've heard anybody necessarily say that about you, but I think it's easy for people to just see a snapshot of someone's life and say it must be nice without having any context of what it took to get there. So I do hope that anybody that listens to this podcast can at least grasp from your story sort of what it's like to be a grinder, man, and like stay on a path and achieve good things. So
yeah, well, no, appreciate that, and that's I've always taken pride in that, being a grinder, and that's a big term in hockey. We always use for kind of the role players, the players that aren't the stars, that aren't the ones scoring the goals. So When you're called a grinder, that's always a positive thing in the hockey.
Shit, I didn't even know that. And here
you
we
go.
are right
There you
there,
go.
just using the lingo.
Step one,
even.
it worked.
I love that. There is an interesting aspect to that. I was thinking sort of, before this conversation earlier today, I was thinking, in a sport where there isn't many points scored, there certainly has to be a lot of positive or good things that players are doing throughout the game, probably hundreds maybe. But it might not get noticed, so there is an interesting aspect of that, of like, without getting the glory, you're still grinding, I suppose.
No, for sure. And that's the thing, as coaches, that's what we're looking at with players, because you're right. If it's kind of in hockey, a lot of time, the term is it's a race to three. The team that scores 3 goals usually has a real good chance to win. Obviously, it's not always the case. So you're right. It's a 60-minute game. So there's a whole bunch of other plays that go into that, and so those players that are doing those little things to help the team, plays away from the puck, plays in the defensive zone, things like that, putting their body in front of a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot, things like that, sacrifice for the team, they're very, very valuable, and hence that's why the term grinder is used so much.
Makes sense. So there's the NHL, obviously, that a lot of people are more than likely familiar with. Your guys' league is the Iowa Wild plays in the
American Hockey League, the AHL.
AHL. I just didn't want to mess that up.
Yep.
So can you just give me a glimpse of sort of being I would say a farm team for the Minnesota Wild in the NHL? Can you just give me a glimpse of what that looks like? I mean, as a coach, and just sort of, if somebody that doesn't really know how that whole relationship works, just what that is in a nutshell.
So very similar to AAA baseball, in that obviously the Iowa Cubs here in Des Moines, but it's just, we work together on all aspects of the organization. We play very similar systems to Minnesota, really a developmental league for all aspects, coaches, players, refs, everything. Big part of our mandate is to make sure that the draft picks and that the prospects are getting ice time, getting opportunity, so that they can play, they can grow their game, and one day help the Minnesota Wild. So we'll have anywhere from, it could be upwards of 10 prospects or draft picks on our team. Some will get some NHL games during this season. Some won't. Some will be down the road. Some will never get games. We'll also have 5 to 7 veteran players, usually 25 to 30-year-old players that they'll kind of have dual roles. Their role for us in Des Moines is to be real good leaders to the young players, also to kind of drive our team to be good players for us, but they'll also be guys that usually have some National Hockey League experience that the NHL team can call on and use in certain situations. We have 3 of them up there right now playing for Minnesota. So there's a lot of different layers to it, and a lot of different dynamics to it, but a big part of it is developing. But then each and every day, our lineup will change based on what Minnesota needs. As far as, they might need a big right shot defenseman one day, and then they don't the next day. They might need a left shot forward, and they might want to call up one of the younger prospects to play a game, and then maybe he's not getting as many minutes as they would like, so they'll send him back to us so that he can get more minutes and more responsibility. So very fluid. Every day our roster's changing, sometimes a couple times per day. Makes it fun, keeps us on our toes, but makes it challenging at times too.
Who is the head coach for the Minnesota Wild?
John Hines is his name. He's unbelievable coach. He's done an amazing job this year.
So you guys, I mean, if I don't want to assume necessarily, but I mean, it must just be sort of open line of communication between you two probably all the time then.
Yep. Yeah, we talk quite a bit. Obviously, we both get busy with our own teams, but we're I lean on him quite a bit, and he leans on me as far as who to call up at times.
Is it fun to let guys know? Is that phone call fun when it's like, hey, you get to go up and play, bud?
Yeah, it's the best. Yeah, it's the best part of my job. We like to do it in person as much as we can, and there's been a couple this year. The guys have got their first calls up to the NHL, and that's special. You can just see what's going on in their minds. They're thinking about all those trips to the rink as a young player, and they're thinking about their parents and their siblings, and it's who they have to call. We had one kid was in shock this year. He didn't know what to say. It's a very, very special moment to be a small part of that.
That's awesome. I think a lot of times, in life in general, we can immediately jump to sort of the negatives of whatever the situation might be. And And even before we kind of got rolling, we were talking about the fact that you have an ever changing roster and so on and so forth. But it just, I mean, that certainly would be incredible to see somebody's like, hey, this is your chance, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
so that's cool. Well, I tell you what, I kind of want to dive into. You were an assistant with Minnesota. You're now the head coach of the Iowa Wild, and we'll eventually get there. But how does Brett McLean get to Des Moines, Iowa, coaching the Iowa Wild? I mean, I kind of want to. I want to give you enough time to go back to childhood, man, and like let's just kind of run down that path.
Ooh, this might take a while, but
Yeah. So I
if you
mean,
got time.
just like let us know where you
Yeah.
grew up originally as a young kid, and we'll kind of follow the story a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up off the west coast of Canada, Vancouver Island, a small town called Royston. It's in the Comox Valley, like I said, on Vancouver Island. Beautiful place, recreation capital of Canada, they call it. You can do anything outdoors there, from skiing to fishing to hunting, everything, anything outdoors. So beautiful place, picturesque. Just we have you look out our front deck and window, just beautiful ocean view. Very fortunate. My parents still live in that same home, and grew up there with my two older brothers, and then played every sport growing up, every single sport you can imagine, except football, because football wasn't big where we're from, which is, I know that would be foreign thought to people in Iowa. There's no football, but then started to show some promise in hockey at a young age, and there's a school. There's all sorts of sports schools now, but there really wasn't at the time. This is over 30 years ago now, I guess.
What time frame was that?
So that would have been, I was born in 78.
Not to age
so you, yeah, so there you go. So early 90s then,
Okay.
Really early 90s. And so there's a place called Athol Murray College of Notre Dame, which is in Wilcox, Saskatchewan, town of 300 people. The school has 400 people, so the school is bigger than the town. It's 45 minutes south of Regina, so just flat and cold, and but legendary hockey school, where boarding school where you could go and play hockey there and get a really good education. Both my parents were teachers, so that was very, very important to them. So and I'd watch them back then. Hockey wasn't on all the time, TV, and of course there wasn't YouTube and all that stuff to watch hockey. But I remember Notre Dame is what we called the school in Canada, and still do. It was always in the national championship for Canada for U18 hockey and Bantam hockey. So it was somewhere that I'd always wanted to go. It had this mythical air to it. So then I got accepted there. So 2 weeks after my 14th birthday, I jumped on an airplane with my brother, my oldest brother, Sean. He was flying to McGill University in Montreal. So he dropped me off in Regina, Saskatchewan.
How old was he at the time?
He was 6 years older than me, so 20. So yeah, 20 and 14. He put me in a taxi cab from Regina Airport. I took the 45 minutes south ride, got dropped off in the middle of the parking lot, the hockey rink parking lot in Wilcox, Saskatchewan, and my hockey gear and my sticks in one arm, and my school bag and some clothes over the other one, and found my way to register for school, and went there for the next 2 years and played hockey there. And that was kind of the start of my hockey journey away from home. Yeah.
Okay, so there's obviously a lot to unpack there. I'm just curious I mean, at what age, because we all play sports when we're really young or whatever, you have fun. At what age was it when you sort of recognized, like, Brett's got above average talent? I mean, was it like 7, 8? You started seeing it, or your parents did?
Yeah.
And then I'm just curious. I mean, did they reach out to the school and sort of like, did you guys go visit as a family or anything, or you literally just went?
Gosh, no, it just went. Yeah, no, I think it was about probably 11 or 12. Started to see, the hockey gets a little bit, it's not just all the kids chasing the puck around, and started to see that, and started to go to a couple bigger tournaments in Vancouver and excelled there. And I think my parents too are a little old school in that they're like, hey, let's see what this kid's got a little bit. It looks like he's excelling here, but is it a matter of big fish in a small pond type of deal? Like, let's go see what is there something here? There's obviously, he's got a passion for it. He's excelling in our small corner of the world. Let's go see what we've got out there. No, and then it was my parents sending letters to the school. I'm sending it back, and I get accepted. And then, you look back now, my parents had to mortgage the house to pay for it and stuff like that. Like, just the sacrifices, amazing. And then there we were, off to school.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think it's important to grasp that context because, fast forward to today, and obviously you have kids now, and just, I can't even imagine, our oldest is 10, and I can't even imagine in like 4 years, like her just, zipping off to academy of some sort without ever like visiting, but also just with how youth sports has evolved. I mean, it's insane, right? And we sort of just get our kids into these clubs, and they're already playing all these club sports and everything at such a young age now. And I just think it's interesting, back then it was really just, grind it out, and then you were gone. Yeah. So
see what we got. And it's great. Yeah. I have my daughter's turning 18 tomorrow, and we have a 13-year-old boy and a 9-year-old boy. And I can't imagine them leaving at 14. It's just a different time too, right? Like, I think a little bit. And then, to even go back even further, my mom is from Australia and came over on a teacher's exchange. So when she was in her early 20s, had nowhere to go for Christmas. So my dad lived in the area, invited her for Christmas. And so that's how their relationship started. So kind of like, we're the type of family where it was like, if you saw an opportunity, and even if it looked hard and challenging, let's just go do it. And I think it probably started from my mom coming over from Australia.
Was that, part of your childhood growing up? Was that a message that was often, is that sort of how she operated then as a person, like with you guys too? Like, just kind of cultivated that in you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's, if you want something, go after it, and go and get it. And
wow. Yeah, the concept of all of that is really tough to grasp with things the way they are these days, for sure. So you get there, just a kid with his hockey gear. So you get registered for school, and then, your brother gets landed where he was going, and does he just like try to get a hold of somebody to like check in on you and make sure you're good to go?
Well, no, then my parents gave me a phone card when I left there, like one of those prepaid phone cards, and that's what I would just call each night. Call my parents and just let them know I was good. No cell phones or nothing at the time, and so I'd call from the dorm, the dorm rooms there, and until I'd bawled every night, cried every single night, wanted to come home. My parents said, "No chance, you're coming home. We paid for this already. You're not. We don't get a refund." So, and then we just. So I was there for about the first month, and hockey doesn't start yet. They get everybody settled in school, and then they do hockey tryouts, and then. Fortunately, I made the top hockey team, and so that kind of springboarded me to then you really get close with the team, and then things went well for those 2 years. I'd get to go home at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, spring break, and then go home for the summers, obviously, and then went back the following year for my grade 10 year, and then after that went to play junior hockey in Tacoma, Washington. Was my first year in the Western Hockey League, there's 3 major junior leagues, they're called, in Canada: Western Hockey League, Ontario Hockey League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. And so the Western Hockey League was the one, obviously, out west, kind of in the area that I was from. And so we started in Tacoma, Washington, our team, the Tacoma Rockets, and then we moved after my first season. The whole franchise moved to Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, which is where my wife's from. I met her a few years later, and we were the Kelowna Rockets, and I played junior hockey then for the next 5 years.
So while you were moving around in that environment, you were still just taking your high school courses and just in an environment. What's that environment like? I imagine everybody's sort of got a common goal. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot of people that are, there can't be a ton of diversity necessarily. Everyone's probably got similar sort of paths, not necessarily like upbringing wise, but just, everybody's there to play hockey, right? Yeah. And so, is there a difference, or like, what was that like compared to the way you see your kids growing up now?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, because I do think about that quite a bit, the junior hockey scene, because everybody, to make it to that level, you're good. Everybody's really excelled. And just people handle it differently, right? And so then everybody's their first time away from home. Usually they're living with billet family, so they're getting a lot more freedom than they normally get. Obviously, I was unique in that because I'd left home when I was 14. That really helped me going away at 14, because then at 16, I'd already lived away from home for 2 years. And so I went through, remember I said I was balling on the phone each night at 14. So I was used to living away from my parents. I think that really helped me in junior hockey. But the way people handled it differently, because then you are at a high level. Most of the kids are getting challenged for the first time. You're not playing all the time. You're not scoring all the time. You're not one of the top players. So it becomes a very challenging situation for some people, and some people handle it differently. Some kids handle it really well and can excel in that situation. Some not so well. Some maybe start drinking when they shouldn't be drinking. Some maybe start chewing tobacco, something like that. When they have a lot of downtime, and it just they maybe don't handle it as well. Some just get kind of goofy, and because that's how they deal with the stress. And so it's a unique situation, junior hockey, and the organizations that I were in were just fantastic, and all of the, and so you really have to lean on the management and ownership and coaching staff of those junior teams, because they've got a whole bunch of young teenagers that they're now responsible for, and it's a big undertaking for those people.
Yeah, you're shaping young adults in what is essentially a very cutthroat world, and yeah, I mean, if you're doing your job successfully, then you need to get the best out of them. I recently in the golf world, and I use this maybe as a poor comparison, but I think there's similarities. I think people underestimate the level of talent and skill, but also the mental aspect of becoming pro in any sport. And I think a lot of times people, in rec leagues or whatever, are like, oh, if I devoted all my time and energy and had unlimited resources, I could be pro too. And especially in the golf world, I think that's what's unique about golf, is like anybody can hit a quality golf shot one time, but it's consistently, obviously. But the mental pressure of being in those high pressure situations, tournament wise, and so on and so forth, it can really just make people crumble. And so what's interesting, I think, about that junior hockey setting is just, I mean, do you think, like, you look back on it as you appreciate what it did for you, making you mature at a young age? Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if I want to use the term healthy. Like, there's obviously unhealthy results to that too, right? Some people don't handle it well.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. And you're teenagers, so you don't have the tools to handle it, and yeah, so it can be really challenging for a lot of people, and a lot of young athletes. And the hardest part, and it's even harder now, I'm guessing, and you touched on it in the youth sports scene now, is just in youth sports, right? Every kid's told they're unbelievable at 11 and 12 years old, and they got videos on YouTube and everybody. And so now you get to a junior hockey scene, and now it's really challenging. And how do you deal with that? It can be hard.
Is that sort of the way the sports still is? Like, is that the ranks that you would climb? Like, is that how it's still structured today?
Yep. Yeah. It's the same in Canada. Okay. Yeah, still the same. And then of course you could also go to college hockey in the U.S., which is obviously an unbelievable option too. So it's just, you have that option.
Yeah. So you made it. So you were there through, you were like 19
till 20.
Okay.
Yeah, I played till I was 20, and I was drafted my 18-year-old year, and then I wasn't signed by the team so I was passed over in the draft my first year. I didn't get drafted, which is a real blow. And then I was drafted the next year, and then the team decided to not sign me, Dallas Stars. And then I went back in the draft and got passed over in the draft again.
So that's the NHL.
NHL draft.
So at that time, like, NHL is the big daddy. So anybody, whether you're from Canada, I mean, that's just like other sports. Like, they're bringing people in from wherever. So okay, so the first year you get passed. When you get passed over, then I mean, just as a guy, first of all, like, how do you handle that? What did that look like?
It was really hard. It was just it was gutting, and I had a really good season too. So that was even harder, right? I played really well and felt I'd earned the right to be drafted. It's not like I was injured or I missed or didn't have a good year. So it was, but what do? You just get back to work and go back and try to prove them wrong.
did you have a coach or anybody at that time that sort of like just helped keep you in the right mental state of how to handle that stuff, or you just sort of
Yeah. No, I mean, 'cause that's the nice thing about having the junior hockey coaches. They were really good. Our coach at the time, Peter Anholt, great person, great human, and he was fantastic. But I think with myself, I always kind of leaned on my family and my parents, and it goes back to, like I said, and I say this as a compliment. My parents they're hard people, and like it's like don't complain, don't blame others, don't just get back to work. Like, okay, you didn't get drafted, go kick butt and get drafted next year. So so that's what I would always lean on.
I personally I love the there's actually a guy that was just in the office the other day. He came in to record a different podcast actually, and he was leaving, and we were just talking about some random stuff that was like going on in our world at the time. And he left me with when something happens or there's a problem, you look at that for 60 seconds, and then the rest of your time spent on solutions.
Yeah.
Like you get 60 seconds, acknowledge whatever it is that you're facing, and then the rest of your energy, the rest of your time needs to be spent coming up with solutions. And you hear things said so many different ways, but for some reason, just the way that he articulated that to me, I was like, fucking A, like that is, I love that type of, because so many people just dwell on stuff,
Sure. Well, yeah, the saying in our family is, okay, we know what the problem is. Now let's find the solution. So it's the exact same thing. That's what we say. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So, and the other thing I just want to touch on too, I mean, obviously you're coming up through the ranks to the junior hockey league. I mean, your intention basically from the time you leave home at 14 is to play in the NHL, right? I mean, like there's no question about that.
It is, but it was like I said, from a small town in Western Canada, like the NHL still seems like a long way off.
Okay.
It's just, I love this game. Let's just keep moving on. Like, when I left home when I was 14, it wasn't to play in the NHL. It was like, let's see what I got here. Like, can I get to junior? And then in junior, it was like, okay, now let's get to the next level, to get to pro. Like, I always knew that I wasn't going to be a first round draft pick, I knew that. So it's like, okay, let's just get to the next level. Let's get to the AHL and then try to get from there to the end. It was just, let's just keep playing here.
So to your point, versus some of these kids that are getting told you're the best from age 12 now, yours was almost a little bit different in the sense where it was like, hey, go prove yourself. And then when you get to that next step, prove yourself again. And so you kind of had that like foundation. That's awesome. So the Dallas Stars, those sons of guns. So they draft you and don't sign you.
Yeah.
What, just for like a non-pro sports dummy that doesn't know, is that they get you in, so they draft you and you show up to the facilities, and then it's like a tryout type scenario, and they're like, hey, sort of like the NFL would be, or that's my only
No,
comparison?
it's you come in, and so they have your rights for a certain period of time. And so then I come in, I go to training camp, and at NHL training camp, so there's 23 players on a roster. You usually bring in about 50 players. Those are your draft picks, maybe a couple other invites that the team likes that aren't the team's property. And so you go in. So I had a really good training camp, then I had a really good season again. And then they just informed my agent that they didn't want to sign me. And again, that hurt. Again, I had another good year. And that's another lesson that I learned probably through all this was my focus every year was just have a good season. It wasn't about what the next step. It was just because then you give yourself more and more opportunities. So yeah, and they just said, hey, thanks for it, but we're gonna move on.
Is that sort of just not like there needs to be a cliche sort of attachment, but it's really just more about just trust the process then, and like it's not just all results driven, because that you're controlling the things you can control. Like, is that what just kind of kept you grounded then? Because I mean, there's a lot of people that at that moment having the elation of getting drafted and then not being signed could be like, hey, screw this.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was just too dumb to think about it too much. Maybe I just kept like I just want to play hockey, So so I went back to my junior team again, and so I just keep going, keep playing, and I don't even think about it from a bigger viewpoint, or I didn't at the time. I was a teenager, right? I just want to go play hockey with my buddies, and that's what I kept doing.
Yeah. All right. So next turn then.
So next turn, and I finished my junior career, and then I signed in the American Hockey League, or I signed So they call two-way contracts. So in American Hockey League with the ECHL, that would be the like AA hockey, the league below us. So I signed with the St. John Flames, which is a Calgary Flames farm team. I go there and to the Calgary Flames training camp and the St. John's training camp, and I make the team. I actually got sent down to the ECHL. The Johnstown Chiefs was their ECHL affiliate. I was there for 3 weeks. They are the real-life Charlestown Chiefs from Slapshot. No joke. There's all the Slapshot fans out there.
There's going to be some hockey hardos that listen to this because I got some buddies, so they'll appreciate that.
They'll know the Hanson brothers. So legendary movie and team. And so I played for them for 3 weeks and then back to St. John. So I had a good first pro season. And so then, again, I had a real solid season, was really excited that kind of the step you'd want a guy like myself was to get an NHL contract. That's what you want to get, an NHL contract. So I was on an AHL contract, which is good, but you want to get an NHL one. That means you're part of the NHL team. It doesn't mean you're on the NHL team, but you got a chance. You're on there. At the end of that season, Calgary fires everyone to do with the St. John organization, every single person. So no NHL contract, no nothing, kind of start all over again.
Nothing that was even remotely in your control either.
But again, it had a good year. So then after that year, this is interesting, the Minnesota Wild were starting, expansion franchise. So this would have been in 2000, starting. Minnesota Wild that summer offered me an NHL contract, a 2-year NHL contract. So I signed with the Minnesota Wild. Yeah.
I didn't remember that from your conversation that you had with us. So it all started with the Minnesota Wild.
Minnesota Wild.
From a pro perspective. That's awesome.
So signed with them, played on their minor league teams for 2 years, and then just did well, but then wasn't called up to the NHL, didn't get any NHL games. So then became a free agent again, which kind of common, like for second, third, fourth year pros, it kind of happens like this. You play well for one team, but maybe you're not in their NHL plans. Maybe they have, like I was a left shot forward. Maybe they have a bunch of good left shot prospect forwards. So, all right, we'll let you move on. You sign with a different team. And so then I signed with the Chicago Blackhawks and actually got my first NHL games the next year. And then the following year made the Blackhawks and was able to play. So in my 5th year.
Is there any moments specifically as you were coming through the ranks there and like, I mean, that you want to share, just like hitting that ice for the first time, like as in the real deal, or
probably. Like? I mean, the one cool one was we were my first ever NHL call up, which is something you always remember. We talked about that. We actually our coach. I was playing for the Norfolk Admirals at the time. It was Chicago Blackhawks farm team. Our coach always hosted a Christmas party as his host for the whole team. It was great. So we're having a few beers. It was great. And he comes up to me in the middle. He's like, "Hey, don't have too many of those." I'm like, "Oh, never, of course, right? Never, coach." Yeah. What do you mean? He says, "Well, you're going up tomorrow morning." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "You can't say anything right now just because we do the same. It's got to be announced by the team for stuff like that." But he's like, "Oh my!" So I ran into a different room, called my parents, and so that was real special, obviously. And then my first game was in Long Island against the New York Islanders. Nassau County Coliseum, and then my next game the next night was in Madison Square Garden. Now, that was pretty cool.
Are you playing
MSG
me?
in Game 2?
Oh my Lord!
So that was very, very special. Playing for the Chicago Blackhawks against the New York Rangers in Madison Square Garden.
Did you guys win?
We did win. Yeah.
All right. So
it's very cool. We won both games. We won both those 2 games.
Yeah.
So and then I got sent back down, but didn't matter. I was jacked up, and then actually. Another little tidbit from that is I remember the head coach, Brian Sutter. He was fantastic. He was great to me. He said, "Hey, I want you to take the video from these 2 games just so you can watch it. I thought you played well. I want you to have the video." Well, it was VHS tapes.
Yeah.
That was the video. It was VHS tapes. Like think about it now, right? You get it on Dropbox or just on your phone or whatever.
Yeah.
It was VHS.
Literal game tape.
VHS tapes. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
What was speaking of tape and like watching film and stuff, what was training like then? Like in that era? So I mean, coming up to the late 90s and then now we're in early 2000s or like 01.
Yeah, we're in like 2003 at this point. 2000, yeah. Around.
So what was 20 years ago? I mean, it's now I'm starting to feel old because early 2000s doesn't feel like that long ago. But I mean, what was training like then? I mean, now it seems like things are just so hyper focused and like very specific training movements and different things. What was that like for you guys?
Yeah,
at
it
the
was
time?
lots of bench press and back squats. But no, I was starting to get into the movement stuff because now it's, we understand movement so much better now, and especially in hockey, dynamic movement. So it was starting to get into that. But yeah, still a lot of kind of old school strength and box jumps and things like that, which are still important and used to this day. But yeah, it was still kind of that mix of the old school with kind of the new thought.
I don't want to get too far off the rails, but this is just interesting to me too. I mean, just speaking to that, then how much of, so like when you're on that pro team, or I mean, I'm sure it's not much different for you guys either. Like how much of your practice regimen is ice time? Is it a lot of off ice? Like, are you in meeting rooms and talking about these scenarios, or what's that look like?
Yeah, no, so great question. So a lot of our in season, we practice quite a bit, but not maybe as much as people would think, because obviously with the travel and the games are so stressful on the players' bodies, and we understand now, how much stress goes into those games, and how much the players' bodies are taxed, and their best way to perform. In that, we'll practice about an hour, roughly an hour on ice will be it, and that'll be, a few times per week, a couple times per week at least. We'd like it to be more. Sometimes it'll be three or four times a week if we just play, say, on a Saturday, Sunday, or a Friday, Saturday. But it's about an hour of practice each day, and then the off ice part is probably about the same. I'd say about an hour, and it's not all killing guys in the gym. It's more warm-ups, cool downs, things like that, to make sure their bodies are moving properly. Hockey's big in that skating is a really unnatural movement for the body and hips. It's just your body's supposed to go straight forward and back and up and down, and obviously hockey doesn't work that way. Plus, as you're doing it, you're getting hit, and so backs and hips and shoulders and everything are just. When I was playing, the trainer that I had, Andy O'Brien, he's one of the best. He would always say, in the summer, our training is just trying to get your body back to neutral, because it just gets so messed up during the season. All I'm trying to do is get you to start the season back at square one. So it was a really good way to put that. And then there's a lot of theory and video and things that we do. Don't try to do too much. Try to keep meetings below 15 minutes, just based on attention spans, right? But then there'll be a lot of individual video. So it's probably equal parts of all three, kind of, on ice, off ice, plus video. The players each get their shifts sent to them, so they watch their shifts, and then we'll watch it with them as well. And then as a team, we'll watch. And then when we're preparing to play a team, we'll watch what we call a pre-scout on that too. So I'd say about even parts, all three.
Try to pick apart tendencies different guys might have, and so on and so forth.
Guys, different teams, things like that.
Was it in that early 2000s era, being in the States? So I mean, you were in Chicago at that point. Was it hard? Is it hard to find ice time? Like, because I mean, where you guys play for games obviously isn't where you're skating probably for practice. Like, is that difficult?
No, I mean, it's grown so much now, but they'll always have a practice facility for the team, but it can be in some cities, it can be really challenging. I remember a few years ago when I was with the Iowa Wild as an assistant, we'd play in San Antonio, and so they'd play in their big facility, but then there was only one sheet ice for practice, and I think it was like crazy expensive. So we played on a Friday and a Sunday, so on a Saturday we practiced, and they would only buy the ice for an hour, the home team, so we each had to split it for a half hour, and they wouldn't get it anymore. So they're trying,
Really?
it was just, so that's to your point. Sometimes it is challenging to find ice for in these cities.
That was something that for some reason I was just, because I remember when we got the West Des Moines Recplex, they have three. Do they have 2 or 3 sheets ice?
Two.
Yep. So when that opened up, I remember when the guys were talking about it, they were talking about the Iowa Wild. You guys use that facility, correct?
Yep.
And just that, how advantageous that would be to have more ice availability. Yep. And I'm glad I thought about it prior to this conversation, but it was something I remember at that time where I'd never even thought about. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can go dribble a basketball anywhere or whatever, but like to get ice time, obviously super important. So.
It could be a challenge, and especially in the non-traditional hockey markets, right?
Yeah,
It makes
exactly.
Makes a big difference. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know personal life wise, obviously as a human, when you're dealing with these different struggles and moving around and you get, so you're on the Blackhawks. Are you married at that time yet?
No, not yet. Wasn't. So after the Blackhawks, there was a NHL lockout. They had a work stoppage. So then actually went to Sweden. It was a bummer because it was like I just got in the door and now they have a work stoppage. So I went to Sweden and played that year and needed to play, and then came back and then and then signed, and then again, weird how things work. I was a weird quirk in the NHL CBA in that because I was older, right? Usually as a rookie, you're early 20s. I was over 25. My contract ended. I played less than 80 NHL games. I played 78. It actually worked out perfectly. So I was a free agent. I became a free agent. So Chicago didn't offer me a great contract. We thought so. I signed with the Colorado Avalanche and played there for the next 2 years. And Brenna and I got married in between those 2 seasons in Colorado.
When you went to Sweden, was it are you sort of just on your own, or do you go with other guys like from the team that you were on, or how does that look?
Yeah, no, you go pretty much on your own. Sometimes guys pair up, but I had a friend that I played junior with, one of my line mates. He was playing on a team in Sweden there, so I went and joined him.
I just think there's an aspect to pro sport like that it doesn't really get talked about much, the human element. And you had mentioned like how hard it is on guys traveling and so on and so forth, but I mean, you're in a country potentially where different languages get spoken. You're in where the culture is completely different, and you're trying to also excel at this one thing. Also, I mean, can you speak to that a little bit? Like,
really,
I mean, what
really
was it
difficult.
like being in Sweden?
Yeah, Sweden was great. Like everyone speaks English there.
Yeah,
so that was it's easy. Sweden's an easy one to go to. They love their hockey there.
I had some family that lived in Sweden. I traveled there when I was 5. I don't really remember much. But
great country. Yeah. So that one wasn't too hard. I was still single at the time, so it was just kind of you're just going to to play hockey again. So yeah. But it was challenging for sure, and I got injured a couple times that year. So then you're just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Like it wasn't easy, but that's a really good country to go to in Europe. But no, it comes with its challenges for sure. Yeah, I remember we had a meeting, our team wasn't doing well, and we had a meeting. It was all in Swedish, and one of the players had to sit beside me and translate for me the whole time. I'm like, sorry, man.
Yeah.
Right. So it just comes with.
So how did you meet your wife?
We met Kelowna. I mentioned earlier that was the city that I played most of my junior hockey in. So I actually, it's cool. I got to know her family really well, and her older brother, was a goalie, and he played at Mankato, Minnesota State, played college hockey there. And so in the summers, I would always organize. It's different now. Like guys are training all summer, and there's all these skates and everything for them to do. It was different back then. We just got some ice, and guys got out there and skated. Hockey wasn't 12 months like it is now. Like people would take the summer off, but I would always organize the skates, and we needed goalies, right? So I would always get her brother to be the goalie. So got to know him really well and got to know the family really well. And then we just became friends, Brenna and I, and then just obviously became more than that. So it was really that we were friends first. And so, she's obviously my best friend in the world now. So it's cool that we were friends first, and then
her brother thought that was all right.
He was good with it.
Yeah.
He was good with it. I know that was a big.
I mean, as a goalie, he's probably bigger than you too.
That was a big. He's jacked. He's jacked. Yeah, no, he's in the best shape. This guy. So no, it was. He's pretty much my best friend now too. So
that's
awesome. Worked out very well. Yeah.
So when you guys got married before you went to go play for Colorado?
In between the 2 years in between, yeah.
So then she just moved with you when you guys went out there. And how does that work for married life when you're traveling and playing? And I suppose it's different, obviously, like if you have kids, if you don't. But would she travel with you during the week, like to different games, or how did that look? No, they don't. So the wives, no, they don't travel. They might. Maybe she'd come in for one game or something on the road, but no. And then no,
the hockey life is very challenging on the spouses, and it takes extra special supposed to support your husband and family through this. We ask, there's a great deal asked of them.
Yeah, that's one of the aspects that I was really curious about, honestly, because so as a person, not necessarily man or woman, just depending on who's doing it, but it's one thing to sort of have drive and determination and pursue goals and overcome roadblocks and do all these things like as an individual. But one of the things that I still do extremely poorly at is understanding that I also have a family that is like sort of along for this ride too, and I don't always do the best job of helping them understand why I'm willing to take risks or go through BS, So is that something that, was that something that you guys always sort of talked about just well or openly from the get-go, or was that a challenge to sort of overcome of like, well, now we're moving to X?
Yeah. I think we've just been open and honest to everything all the time, and that's served us well. Sometimes our kids maybe know too much, and sometimes that can be, but we just are open and honest about everything. We've even, decisions we make on places to go to live. Like, for example, the first time to move to Des Moines, our daughter was 10 at the time, and she was in on the decision. And so, yeah, we've always been open with that. And it doesn't make it easier. It just makes it that we're in it together always. And yeah, I don't know how my wife does it, to be honest. There's times I'm gone for weeks at a time, and I don't know how she's able to do that. Sometimes I can't last a day, right, when she's gone with the kids. So
right.
It's very special, and just anyone that is in hockey or sporting life and is married, they're very fortunate to have the spouse that they have that will go through the ups and downs and doesn't necessarily get the ups too, right? Like, that's the thing, right? Like, we win a game, makes me excited, but that doesn't necessarily help. But they're so supportive and very thankful.
Yeah. So 100. Yeah, that's a really good point, honestly, that they don't really get. They obviously, if you do well, your family can do well financially and so on and so forth. But the reasons why a lot of times we do things isn't even necessarily for that, right? Like, we get the satisfaction of the hard work we put in, but they don't really get to share in a lot of those moments that you get to feel, like your wife doesn't get to feel when you get to tell somebody they're getting called up, and you do. Yeah. That is powerful. So, well, you guys, so you're in Colorado, and then how does that go? Like, immediate success, you're crushing it.
2 good seasons. Again, I've kind of established myself as an NHL player now. I've done very well. And then at the end of my second year there, I had a really good season, really good year, and I become a free agent again. They offered me a contract, but it was an opportunity for me to really make some good money playing hockey. So I was offered a way more money than I should have been offered by the Florida Panthers. We're not talking about huge millions or anything like that, but more money than a player like me deserves. So we jumped at that and went down to Florida and played in Florida for the Panthers for the next 2 years.
Can you break that down a little bit? Just of what is interesting to me in any pro sport is sort of how the agents in these organizations establish markets. We build homes, and we're sort of bound by what our local market, I guess, supports, right? And not that that's like just precise, but it's usually within certain bounds. So like when that moment happens, so Colorado comes to you first and just says, "Here's what we're willing to offer."
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a really stressful time for my family and I, because they offer me a really good 2-year contract, and it's like, whew, should we take this?
So, and then, sorry to interrupt, but so in that moment, then, like, because there are rules, and I don't want to say laws, but like rules within the organizations like that within the NHL, right? Like, was it okay for you to go out and talk to other teams about potential contracts yet, or did you have to? How does that free agency work?
So, yeah, like I think it's till June 30th, where you have your exclusive. The team has your rights that you've been on, and so they offer us that like late in June, and it's like, and we already touched on, how passed over in the draft a couple times, right? Had a good year in Chicago, didn't really get offered a good contract. So I'm gun shy, right? Like I'm like, geez, this is a good offer. Should I take this, right? And my agent's like, trust me, do not take this. But I'm still nervous because I'm like, geez,
what do you know that I don't know?
Yeah,
man?
like what do we,
Yeah.
So then I know the rules have changed now, and I think back then it was more, I think everybody kind of talked like the agents kind of talked a little bit. I'm sure they knew there might have been a negotiating window. I can't remember, but there certainly wasn't a contract in place. But I think there was just probably there's conversations being had. We'll say, I'm guessing.
But there's certainly some real fear of, hey, this is here,
Yeah.
and you guys already live there too.
Yeah.
So like,
and I loved it there, and loved it. My wife loved it there, and so there was some real fear. Yeah.
I think that's another element again to that like human side of things that, our favorite, whatever sport it is that you're into, your favorite players and this and that. And like, these guys are moving their whole lives. Like, it's not just a pawn that you get to move around,
Well, to this point, I hope my wife doesn't mind to tell the story, but so then when we do sign with Florida on July 1st, and again, it was just fantastic contract, very thankful for it. My wife cried because she didn't want to leave Colorado. Yeah. She cried, and she was like, "I'm so happy. Like this is we made the decision together to Florida, but it was just the emotions of it. She just loved Colorado, and it's such a great year there. She really wanted to go back, and so like that's to your point. Like we doing the right thing, and we wouldn't go back, but that's the real emotion of it. Yeah.
So how does Florida go?
Florida doesn't go great. It's just Florida. Again, great place, great people there. We weren't a great team those 2 years. It wasn't the Florida Panthers now that we're the Stanley Cup champs. Doesn't go great. I actually have a really pretty good first year, and then second year just didn't have a great season. Got hurt in training camp and just kind of couldn't get going again. Found myself at the bottom of the lineup. Couldn't work my way back up. Obviously, great place to live. Great. Made some great friends there, and so that didn't go great. And then things kind of come full circle in the other way. Then that summer, I can't find another good contract. It was kind of like almost got the feeling, passed over in the draft, things like that. I was never kind of supposed to make the NHL. Then I did it. Then I had one off. So I had 4 pretty good years. One not so good year. It was kind of like, okay, you see, he's not an NHL type of deal. And so I couldn't find another good contract. Went to a training camp the next year in Tampa Bay, had a really good training camp, but, didn't get offered a great contract. They wanted me to start back in the American Hockey League. So decided to go to Europe, decided as a family, we'd had our daughter at the time, decided to go to Europe and signed in Switzerland. Wow. Yeah.
When you were going through that, did you ever have any self-doubt that crept in of like, people talk about imposter syndrome and this and that. Like, because if they're telling you, it had to be a real thing, and whether you let it affect you or not, like, what was that sort of like going through that?
No, totally. I think, yeah, for sure. I'd never heard that imposter, but yeah, definitely. I think, for me, the big thing was I knew how hard I had to work and play to get out of the AHL to the NHL. And I also knew that there were a lot of players that I think are way better than me that never got the opportunity in the NHL. So for me, the fear was kind of going back to the AHL and being like, geez, what, now I don't know. I was 31 at the time. To be honest, I don't know if I had it in me to kind of battle that much to get back up again. Like against 22-year-old, like you got to be, I don't know. I think I maybe knew I didn't have that hunger to battle those 21, 22-year-olds each and every night and ride those buses again. So decided to go to Europe, which was great, and then was in Europe for Switzerland for the next 6 years, and then in Austria for 2 years after that.
So you guys had your second kid when you were...
We actually had the whole story is I went to Switzerland for 2 years, Bern, Switzerland. First year we won the championship, which was amazing. It was just an awesome season. Personally, for the team, it was just a great year.
What's hockey like as a sport over there? I mean, it's huge, right?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah. It's great. It's the fans are like the soccer fans, right?
Okay,
The
so
ultra
you get to
fans.
kind of live
It's
like a king.
awesome.
Like,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
okay.
But a lot of pressure on a foreigner coming over there, like a lot of pressure on the imports, they call them. So there's only a certain number per team, and you're expected to perform. And if you don't, they let you know. So
Because otherwise, somebody's sitting on the couch that
they'll bring it. They'll bring in somebody.
You're taking their spot. They probably.
There. So, and then we had after that those first 2 years, we actually came back, and Brandon was pregnant with our middle child, Nixon. So we actually signed with the Chicago Blackhawks again, signed a 2-way contract, and one reason being we wanted to have Nixon to be born in the U.S. because we'd had such a good experience with Darian being born, our daughter being born in Denver. So Nixon was born in Chicago, and then we were hopeful to maybe get another chance in the NHL, give one more chance. I didn't. I was in Rockford, which is their American Hockey League team. I was there for most of the season, and then toward the end of the season, I got a really good offer to go back to Switzerland. So then took that and went back to Switzerland for the next 4 years. So then our second was born there, and then our third. And then we finished in Linz, Austria, for 2 seasons. And our first year in Linz, our youngest Nash was born in Linz, Austria.
What's Austria like?
Amazing country.
Yeah, I remember watching Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary and just like incredible countryside landscape. It looked gorgeous.
Love Austria. Switzerland, fantastic country, beautiful, pristine. Austria, again, beautiful country, but a little bit more of maybe a melting pot of Europe a little bit. Probably the history of the country has that. Just it's surrounded by a bunch of countries that all speak different languages, and you get Hungary, Italy, Czech, and so just a really welcoming country, I'd say, and we just loved it there. Yeah, just so happy to finish there. And the league is good, really good hockey. Wouldn't be as good as Switzerland or Sweden or the American Hockey League. So as an older player, 38, 39 years old, I was still pretty good player at the time, so that felt good to still be a good player at that time, and really happy that we finished over there. Yeah.
Did you, as you were getting into your late 30s? I mean, I'm 34 now, and I certainly am starting to feel the effect of time and age. But I mean, were you relatively healthy like through your late 30s and able to actually, I mean, enjoy the sport? And that's awesome.
I was really lucky. I was very healthy throughout my whole career. I had a few concussions, couple little shoulder things, but we're talking 2 to 3 week injuries, no big knees or shoulders or anything like that. So I was really, or hips. I was really lucky with that. But my last season, I did start getting a couple little nicks and stuff and groins and things like that right after miss. And I'd never had that before in my career. And that was one of the reasons why I was like, okay, it's time to call it.
Before we wrap up your playing career, was there any moments along that path where like some notable players or maybe notable games that if there's some hockey sickos listening to this that they would appreciate?
Yeah, I got a few. I mean, the one that I'm most famous for, and I can tell you're not necessarily a hockey guy, no offense, because anyone that is asked me. So Sidney Crosby would be the greatest player.
I am aware of who he is.
You're aware of who he is. So my 15 minutes of fame was a fight with Sidney Crosby. So that's my 15 minutes of fame.
All right.
Wasn't much of a fight. We were on a face-off, and he threw me around pretty good. So I wouldn't call it a fight, but that'd be a little bit my 15 minutes of fame. But another one would be Mario Lemieux. I played against my first year, just absolute, one of the top 5 players of all time. And my job was to check him. And so during the game, I was just doing whatever I could, and maybe there were some sticks that shouldn't have been in there by me in certain places. And he came up to me after one whistle and said, "Hey, I understand what you're doing, but show some respect." And I said,
"Really?
Okay, Mario. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Exactly." So, no, that was a good one. Another one was Marc Messier, another legendary player. Again, one of the best players of all time. Played against him, and I remember it was a face-off, and we were on the power play, and they had 2 penalties, so we were on a 5-on-3, so real good opportunity for us. He was taking the face off for them, and I went to go and just dug in, ready to go take it, and he beat me. He was so much stronger than me. He just ripped it, and he was probably in his 40s at the time, or close to 40, and I was in my mid-20s. He just ripped the puck back so easily on me, and I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time. But it was good memory in that one.
That's kind of cool that's, just again, I think a lot of times we forget that these legends, are humans too. And I think that's funny. We're just like, I get you're trying to like prove something here, but like chill out a little bit.
Chill out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a lot of, I want to touch on that real quick too, before we leave that, the fighting thing and sort of like the bro code, if you want to call it, or like as physical and violent of a sport as hockey is there a lot of that, like just guy to guy, like respect also? I mean, or does it get chippy? I don't it's hard for me to wrap my head around a sport that invites you to just check people into the glass, but yet also be cordial at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely a code to it, and we all hope it continues. I mean, it kind of seems to go a little less and less each year, but there definitely is, and I think we talked about this at the when we spoke before, and that in hockey, right? You've got you mentioned it too. In hockey, you've got blades on your feet. You're skating around with a club, right? Like it can get dangerous out there, and people can get very cheap out there, and maybe there's not a lot of repercussions for them, and hockey and fighting is the equalizer to that, and so it allows hockey to police itself, and if you are going to do something, cheap, we'll call it, then you're going to have to answer for it, and or someone on your team will have to answer for it. So there is a role for it, and there's no question, and there's a real role for it in our league, in the American Hockey League. It's a reality because we've got 20-year-old kids that haven't really fully developed yet into their frames, and so you need someone to make them, but yet they're important to the organization, so they need to play, they need to develop, so you need to have someone to make them feel comfortable out there. So it's just it is a part of the sport, it's a reality, and it's a good part of the sport, and obviously we don't want anyone getting hurt. Nobody's a fan of staged fighting or anything like that, or mismatches or anything, but it does keep the game safe, which a lot of people wouldn't understand probably, because fighting and bare knuckle fighting is obviously not safe. But
I like that element though. I wanted you to be able to share. Well, I wanted you to be able to share like why there is a place for it.
Yeah.
When you and old Crosby got into it, what was the cause of that deal?
So there's a good context to that one actually. There was we were beating them 4-0 or 4-1, I think. And it was just an aggressive game, and they were really struggling at the time, their team. He was young. I think he was only his second year in the league. They were struggling at the time. I think they weren't in a playoff spot or anything like that. And so I remember there was a fight in the first period, and he poked me in the glove after, during it. So he was kind of going at me, but I didn't really focus on it. That was the season where I said I didn't have a great season. I didn't play much. So I was just focused on playing some good hockey. I never thought Sidney Crosby would want to worry about me. So then in the second period, there was we were whipping them. There was a face-off in our defensive zone, and there was a fight right off of it. Our centerman was in the fight, so then we needed a centerman to go take the face-off, and so the coach was like, "Mac, go take the face-off." So I jump out there, Crosby's on the other side, and as we're going to the face-off, he's saying, "You're next, you're next," he was saying to me. And I didn't know, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to fight someone. Okay, I don't fight much, I'm not tough, but okay, I guess I got to fight. And after the fact, I realized he was saying, "We're next." That's what he was saying. So here I am, D-zone face-off. I'm like digging in to win this face-off because I'm against Sidney Crosby, and it's a D-zone face-off. They're important. I got to win this. And then right away the fight starts after it and stuff. But again, just part of the game. And then side note, they went on to win the Stanley Cup that season, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So
he played in Pittsburgh a long time, didn't he?
Still is there.
For some reason, did he go to Las Vegas?
No. A lot of players do, but
I don't know why I thought or maybe Pat McAfee or somebody was talking about him one time, and because he's a Pittsburgh guy, and I don't know why I thought that, or maybe he was just joking about it or something. But
Pat McAfee, best show.
Yeah,
I watch it every day. We have it on in our coach's office every day.
I love his blend of, being like a Pittsburgh guy. He's kind of a hockey guy, and but his ability to blend different personalities in sports. And I genuinely appreciate that too, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really want to talk about Coach Brett McLean and you. So in Austria is where you finish out your pro career. You're in your late 30s. And then was it always like as you were getting older in sport that you were like, I'm definitely going to coach? Was that something that like you and your wife were like, what do you think? And how did that evolve?
So never thought I wanted to coach. Never thought that. One reason being that all the moving we'd done as a family, the plan was to move back to Western Canada, Kelowna, and take a year and then decide what we wanted to do next. My wife's family has a great business, restaurants and breweries. Maybe we work in that just to kind of assess. Well, after like 6 weeks of me being around, because you touched on earlier that marriages in sports, like they have a rhythm to them as well, right? So the rhythm is during the season, we're busy, and then in the off season, there's a certain, so the rhythm was all thrown off of it, right? Here I am going to the grocery store with her each day, and I'm like, hey, what are we going to do today? And she's like, no, I need my space too.
Yeah, this is my
so
time.
yeah, she's like, no, like this is, yeah, usually off season, I'm going, she gets some time for it. She's like, this isn't going to work. You got to find yourself a job. She said, we got to get you out of the house. And I think for me too, even though it's off season, when you're a pro athlete, you're still looking to the next season. You're still training for the next season. You're just wired like that. So not having anything necessarily coming up really just what it was didn't sit well. And so reached out to a few people in hockey that I knew, not too many, and just was pretty vague with it. Said, hey, I'd like to stay in the game. Do you have anything available? One of the people was not the current, at the time was the assistant general manager of the Minnesota Wild, named Andrew Brunette. He's now the head coach of the Nashville Predators, but he said, we have this assistant coaching position in Iowa, working with the forwards quite a bit, which I was. I think you might be a decent fit for it. So why don't you interview? And so I did and got the job and then went to my wife, said, hey, I know we've been living in Switzerland and Austria, but what do you think about Des Moines, Iowa?
We're going to Iowa.
The hockey hotbed of Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
And again, sing her praises once again. She's
great place to raise a family. I obviously, being biased,
place.
Like being here, but that would be tough to sell. Being, I mean, even in the States, you had some like Denver's obviously from a scenery perspective
We've
is
been
pretty
to all these great places. Now we did know some people from Iowa that were working in Switzerland when we were there. So we actually did know some people that lived in Waukee. So that helped, but no, just lucky again that my wife said, she said, I just want you happy. And I know if you want this job, we'll move on.
Did it come natural then when you landed there? I mean, and I guess I'll ask too, were you, as an older player, like finishing your career out, were you sort of like a mentor amongst the guys? Like, was that sort of kind of already your deal?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know so.
Yeah.
That was definitely a big part of it. And so,
because not everybody's naturally just like that. I mean, some guys just want to do their thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, a lot of guys do. But no, it just, and then we landed here and back here.
Yeah. So you started as an assistant working with Fords, and then went up to Minnesota as an assistant.
Yep. Yeah. So 3 years as an assistant here, and then 3 years as an assistant in Minnesota, and then was asked to come back here as the head coach.
What was that like, being an assistant? I mean, having player experience. I assume a lot of coaches have playing experience, but being then on that side of the game, just what was that experience like with the Wild?
Yeah, it was. I think it definitely helps being that I'd played, and I think going straight from playing to coaching, having no gap, really helps. It's helped me still kind of think like a player at times and translate it into the coaching thoughts. So that's always been good. But there's always things that surprise you. I think one thing that surprised me that I always say is when I was a player, when we were players, you never wanted to talk to the coach, never, because if the coach was talking to you, there was only a couple things that were happening. One, you weren't going to play that night, or you were going to get sent down. So I'd have my goal for an entire season would be to not talk. That meant I had a good year. That means you're doing great. It's totally different now. So I assume that like the individual meetings with players, showing them video, constructive criticism, that would be a challenging part of the job. It's just the opposite. Like players, they want feedback all the time now. And if you're not giving them feedback, they're like, oh, what's wrong? So that was unique. And I think it's just different generation, right? There's just so much more information on the phones in the palm of their hands, and there's always highlights and stuff. So it just, this generation absorbs information so well that I think that's probably a big part of why they always want that feedback.
Yeah, and I remember I asked you a question too when you came to speak to our group about just coming from that sort of background that you did and like chip on your shoulder, and then some of the kids you're dealing with, don't necessarily, maybe they've always been a badass and now they're still good and they're just there, and like how do you still hold that person accountable? And I'm sure juggling all those personalities it's just never ending. But one of the things I think is interesting is when you're playing, you work on drills. You work on certain movements to get better at certain whatever. You're working out, you're lifting weights, you're running, you're staying in shape in order to get better at your craft. What is something that you do now as a coach to continue to get better at your craft? Or is it just, who holds you accountable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, we get held accountable certainly by our management group. They're all the time. They're pointing out things, and but I think the one area that as a coach and that I found and I thought was just fantastic when I got into coaching is just how humble all coaches are, and no coach thinks they have all the answers. Every coach is happy to help whoever. Like if a coach calls me, I'm calling him back. Who doesn't matter if I've never met him, I'm calling him back and I'm talking to him, because that's what coaches did for me. I think that's how we kind of hold each other accountable, and how I hold myself accountable, in that it just, we're always looking to grow. We're always looking to get better. And it's making sure that even as the head coach, that I'm not saying, okay, this is how we're doing it. We're doing it in my way. It's not. It's everyone, like assistant coach has a good idea, great idea. We're using the assistant coach, great idea. Goalie coach has a good idea for the forwards, great. I think that's kind of the best way. And that surprised me getting into coaching, is just how humble and helpful all coaches are to each other, at least in hockey. And so I think that's a good way, is just always evolving and learning, and because there's no one right or wrong way to do things. And then you touched on it too, with the dealing with the individual players, especially young players, is, geez, every day it's like, oh man, maybe I should have handled that a little differently. Maybe this could have helped them. Maybe it's a pretty humbling profession, to be honest. And
I think there's a lot of people that don't understand whether, when you're a leader of any really level, just constantly I criticize myself harder than I think anybody else can, and I've always tried to be that way. Sometimes I'm better at it than others, but you are you're just always looking for ways to improve efficiencies here and there, and being open to criticism is interesting. But like when you're in that role where you're supposed to be kind of directing everybody else, it's like, one way I'll specifically compare it is in business, when you're supposed to be the guy that has the answers, then I've found myself lately really reaching out. Having this conversation right now, right, is finding other avenues to get advice from and to share experiences. You have experiences that I can learn from that I don't have to go live, that we can talk about and help each other out, whatever. So yeah, just constantly sharpening that sword, man. You're just,
there's no other way. And in sports, you're always winning or losing, right? And even the best teams are losing sometimes. So as a coach, every time you lose a game, you lose sleep over it. And you're like, geez, what could I have done better? What could we have done better? So you're always being evaluated. You're always being humbled. You're always looking to not lose the next one. So it never ends. Yeah.
What's not to jeopardize obviously what you have going on. I don't want you, but what's next for you? What do you think what's the future hold for Brett, as a coach? And
yeah, and I get asked that question all the time, even when I started coaching, and my answer's always been the same. I always just focus on the team I have right now, and just the family that I have, and I guess the easy answer to that is I have no idea. Coach the Iowa Wild right now, but
from a philosophical standpoint, if you take care of now, tomorrow will be okay.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And enjoy what we have right now. And of course, as a coach, and I'm in the American Hockey League now, it would be amazing to get to the NHL at some point down the future, but who knows when that's going to be. And the way I always say to our staff, and I truly believe this is how I have from day one, is it's the best job in the world being a coach, because your only job is just to help the young men or young women that you're coaching to realize their dream. So that's all we're trying to do, and that's all I'm focusing on right now with this group. And like you said, if you do good things, then good things are going to happen. And that's the other thing in coaching, and when you get to this level, is you don't know what opportunities are going to be out there. They may never be out there. They may or they might come in 2 years. Or they might come in 10 years. You don't know, right? Like for example, there's very few jobs in the National Hockey League to coach, so it's hard to get them. There's very few jobs in the AHL to coach. So, enjoy this one we got right now and do the best we can with it.
Yeah, I do think a lot of times, like, just to draw that comparison to business, I think there's a lot of people that spend so much time focusing on down the road that it's like, hey, just take care of today a little bit, Yeah. And I always, I mean, there's been times where sitting in groups where all these people have these articulated like goals and things are listed out, and it's like, fuck, I should be doing that too? Like, because I've always just been like, hey, fundamentally, if we're crushing today, I know tomorrow's going to be good. But
exactly, I feel like I got enough on my plate today too. Don't got to worry about tomorrow.
But I do like, contrary to that, I mean, I do find myself at times too not appreciating what we do have going on probably at times, and like where I'm at as well. But
yeah, I think that's probably, I admit to that too. I think, for sure, gotta enjoy what we got right now. Yeah.
Brett, I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah,
I think we can kind of
fun.
wrap with that. So
It's been fun.
Thanks
for having me.
Yeah.